I'm Zeina Durra and I'm the writer director of Luxor.
I'm Andrea Riseborough and I play Hana in Luxor.
I'm Karim Saleh and I play Sultan.
Let's start with where the film came from. I believe it at first appeared from your subconscious.
Yeah, so I was really down about a project that I wanted to make for a long time. I was told it was on hold and I had to make something else. And that night I went to bed and I had a dream, which was about this woman walking through Luxor, and she had this kind of weight, and it was, there was like a lot in the kind of dream in a kind of subconscious way. So I spoke to a friend of mine who then shot it, Zalmira Gainza, and we were talking on the phone, and I'm like, I think there's something here, and I started to tell her about the film, and she's such a good listener, and she really helped me kind of realize what this dream was about, and then we came up with this. Well, then I came up with the screenplay.
Welcome.
And Andrea, how did it first appear to you?
I was in Senegal. We were shooting 000. And I had 3 weeks off in between starting to shoot a different film. And I just loved it. I loved Zeina's first film, and I loved the script so much. And then we talked.
I was in the Cotswolds in this tiny cottage with all these like green fields behind me. Andrea was in Senegal I think there had been like riots that day. It was like you couldn't be in more different environments. I remember that call.
And then pretty much at the end of that conversation, I said, let's do it.
Talk about the casting process, actually, and then also then if you can both all talk about how then you collaborated.
So I worked with Karim on my first movie, so I pretty much I really wanted it to be like a Middle Eastern guy, because I wanted, to be kind of true to the region, because we were shooting there.
Hana.
Hi.
What are you doing here? I can't believe you're here.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd be here.
Andrea and Karim, can you talk about how you approach your character, and particularly Andrea, you kind of both have PTSD, so how much did you do research? What did you do in regards, connecting people in the field? Talk us through that experience.
I find this happens a lot. The thing I found most helpful was still images. My character's a doctor, and she's working on the Jordanian-Syrian border, or she has been, and she comes from there. And so really images were the most helpful thing, aside from all of the reading and research.
Yes. For all time's sake.
Yeah, like that ever got us anywhere.
Where were you?
I don't know, I don't remember much these days.
Are you going back?
I grew up in Beirut in the 80s, so I had first-hand experience with war zones. My mom also runs a charity that looks after children that are affected by war, and she goes frequently to Baghdad and to places that are affected. And I was there to be very supportive of her, even as a child, because she had to take the car and run away. She had to go through checkpoints, snipers, things like that. And my mother was, in her 30s when she was doing this with us. And so my responsibility was almost to accompany her. And I couldn't be too loud, and I could be funny, but not too funny. And I couldn't be scared because she was. And so this kind of experience of supporting a very courageous woman that is there for me, but also that needs me, is something that I had gone through already. And her emotions, the kind of living in her emotions, allowing her to be the one who is the custodian of fear, the custodian of anger, and allowing myself to have a childhood while taking care of her. A lot of those little things somehow translated. And I think what was really fantastic was that, to be able to experience Andrea's work on this without judging it, I would have felt if the beats were off or if the feelings were foreign to my experience. But somehow Andrea was able to completely channel the emotionality and the courage that I had experienced as a child, which made it a lot easier.
You know, I did a lot of research beforehand as well. And the way I like to work is like when I was talking to the doctors on the border with Syria in Jordan, I just kind of, now I've managed to sort of have a shorthand where I can see the behavioral things that happen and I kind of write them down, and that becomes my sort of guide. So I kind of explained in just like a few behavior. I think the great thing about directing is it's all about behavior and watching and analyzing behavior. And, you know, once you've kind of got those things down, they're really good talking points for either, you know, say with Andrea to explain to, like, you know, all the surgeons. One of them would just said that in his downtime, all he would do was like chop vegetables and make stir fry, you know, like all he would do literally obsessively would do that. Or another guy, you know, they all have these little quirks. And when you just remember that and you can like use that in the way that you direct, I think that might be really helpful because it's quite tangible. People can understand that kind of energy.
I think for me, probably the most profound thing about making the film was just the carrying this heavy heart around in this place that that is the cradle of early civilization, that holds, but more than that, it celebrates civilization's relationship to spirituality. So it's such a loaded place. It's very peaceful, and it's also packed with history. You know, it's sort of it's barren, but it's really the air's almost turgid. It's a very intense place to be.
I think one falls in love with the place and has to keep on coming back.
Are you coming back?
As much as I loved the script, I really understood Zeina's story, or what she dreamt when I arrived there. I really understood Hannah's need to come back to this place, to make sense of what she'd seen, and to be able to carry it and to live with it and to move forward, you know.
And Zeina, can you talk more about time and place and what the experience of being there meant to you? Because it's a place that you hadn't been for a long time, and it reappears in a dream. It must have been also a responsibility, perhaps.
So the region is full of these amazing ancient sites, and what's always, I think, one of the reasons I might have dreamt of it was it's obviously one of the most phenomenal places I've been, but at the same time, when everything's going mad or is unstable over there, you can find, whether it's Luxor or like Petra or Baalbek or wherever, you find this stillness in these ancient monuments that gets more profound as the tourists leave. So, for example, I had been thinking a lot about in the screenplay that I was about to make, there were all these scenes in these ruins in Jordan, in Petra, and in these other places which are kind of unknown. And I had been thinking a lot about that, and I had this real sorrow because I really wanted to somehow communicate that in this madness you can find this stillness, because it's almost like they're there to reassure you that, you know, there are these cycles of history. And all these things existed once, but now don't. But yet, as a human race, we continue. And I felt that was really comforting. I think it was also like Trump had been elected, and you know, everything was going a bit mad. I wanted to show that on film, and I knew that's why I've always been attracted to these kind of older, like Roman, especially Roman ruins, and see ancient Egyptian, and that's kind of like where that came from, essentially. And the idea that, you know, within those places, you see often both sides of the conflict so clearly, because you'll see like American generals on holiday, you know, for their 3-day break from Syria or from wherever, you know, and they're, oh, I'll just pop over and see this place because I'm in the region, I might as well. It's a 1-hour flight, and they go and they see it, or they drive or whatever. And then you've got all the NGO people there who are dealing, like, you know, Hannah's character with the kind of fallout from those political actions. And it's all sort of played out within these beautiful ruins that have this kind of strong presence on so many levels. So yeah, I guess that's why I was drawn to that. And for me, you know, I'm really obsessed with the idea of conflict in daily life, not necessarily in the war zone itself, but how it bleeds into other things. And so that's why I decided to make Hana a surgeon, because who'd been on the front lines, because I really wanted you to, at first I didn't want you to know what she had done. You know, I thought, no, let's not tell anyone who she is, what she does. And then I realized that actually to really engage with an audience, I'd have to say that she had done this, you know, and just to like help give someone something to hold on to in the story. And so, you know, I'd done this research on the Syrian border, and I really did my head in when I did that research, because it's only 45 minutes, this little place from Ramtha's, only about maybe an hour and 20 from my parents' place in Amman. And it's so ridiculous because, you know, like in the Middle East, like nobody knows the names of roads. You just have to say, oh, it's by the chemist, you know, next to the traffic light by the mosque, by like Safeway. You know, that's kind of how you like navigate there. And what was really interesting is that, like, when I went to Google Maps, I always choose like this kind of fancy hotel which is near my parents, because Google Maps will always find it, which is the Four Seasons. So I typed in Four Seasons Ramtha, and that was like my journey. And it was like 1 hour 15 minutes or something ridiculous to go from like the most ridiculously luxurious place to this border where, and it was still also close. And I'm always really fascinated by like how close everything is, and how you can just fool yourself constantly that you're safe and you're away from it, you know, but we're all so intertwined and so you know, just living in the same planet, that it's all so much closer than we think. And I'm really intrigued by those kind of things.
And Andrea and Karim, can you talk a bit more about the experience of not just making the film there, but also how it feels on screen, and what the difference is between those two things?
I suppose my focus was what Zeina had told me, which was that I'd been here before, and I very, very much felt that way. And that's no surprise, because I guess that a lot of people who land in Egypt feel like they might have been there before. You know, it's informed all culture so massively that it feels so strangely familiar.
It's a story of two people who come back together, but in reality, I don't think they were ever apart, in a sense. And I think because of those religious temples were built as a defiance to the notion of mortality. So they were built as a portal that's supposed to be an edifice to timelessness.
We made Karim an archaeologist, or Sultan an archaeologist, and that was a very deliberate move, because that way we would have this familiar access to these places, you know, that were part of Sultan's soul, as well as Hana's, because, you know, when you're young and you're both at university, which is kind of like the backstory, like she's doing a year abroad at like American University of Cairo, and he's there doing his archaeology, and they fall in love. And I think the idea is that, you know, when you're there, you have so much time on your hands that you can just hang out like at the dig, you know, like having coffees and talking to the guys, and just like, you know, then go, you know, and that was kind of also what was so lovely about having the whole archaeology aspect in the film. The film deals with different layers of time and how we deal with time ourselves. Like, you know, I feel like I'm it's my birthday next week. I'm like, oh wow, like I'm really getting there. So and I that was also where I really wanted to write about, and this is something I haven't mentioned, like this time is being dealt with in so many different ways, and because there's so many different elements of time, it has this sense of timelessness because it's all encompassing. I don't know if that makes sense. Correct me if it doesn't. But so, and the film was really important in a way because also dealing with a woman who's looking back, which is what you do often when you're traumatized, looking back, you're going through trauma, and you look back and you try and work out how you got where you got. And in doing so, then bigger questions of like life come up, you know, which then are also mirrored within this landscape of Luxor. I mean, honestly, I would want to make every film in Luxor because it kind of just gives you all these amazing ins to like greater, there's all these amazing kind of inroad, like abilities to connect material just by being in such a kind of a place which is, I guess, you know, which is what they wanted to, mirrors the cosmos, basically, you know, like, especially, we couldn't film there, but now I'm going to forget how to say it, because in the film we have a whole line about saying it, and I can't remember the way. Abydos. It's this place which is phenomenal. And that's like where you never see it. And we were going to film there, but that place is like their holiest site, and it is off the charts. I mean, you go in there, and you can just, everything's vibrating. The light is vibrating on everything, and it's just this. And it's like they've tapped into a different. I know I'm going to sound like a total loon now, but it's like they've tapped into all these different portals. It's almost like you're in this weird time machine when you're in there. And I think that's what's so. That's also what came across in the film, I hope.
I think what's very special about the film is what is quite extraordinary about the film, and what you rarely, an experience that you rarely have. I don't just want to say in the theatre or in cinema, but watching a film, is that you can be transported for a few hours somewhere else entirely, and it is outside of time.
This film is perhaps even more relevant now than when we made it. When we made it, we thought it was relevant, and I was actually worried that, oh my God, the world's going to be so much better in the next year. And actually, then we have a pandemic, and we have like all these issues, all these issues with like just everywhere, from global warming to the Black Lives Matter and all the stuff that's going off in the world, and I think that now really the film resonates even more, and it's actually, as well as transporting you, the nice thing about it is it's not like you're being transported and you're like watching like a 1980s movie that makes you feel good, like Beverly Hills Cop or something. Like, you're actually being transported, and you're also somehow cathartically dealing with maybe some of the stuff you're holding right now.
I'm sometimes very simple in the things that really move me, and I just want to say that there's a love story element in all this sort of, in this very intelligent construction, and I just want to say that I'm always a sucker for a love story.
Oh, me too. I mean, that's why there's a love story there. Like, I thought,
it's my favorite thing. Love is my favorite thing.
So true. Yeah, there is. There's this great love story, and I think again the love story gives you hope, because it's like a love that was never really lost and rekindled, which is always such a beautiful thing, because it's kind of even everlasting love. There you go.
The old world is dying, and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters.